Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank everyone out there for joining us, as I say each and every time. You guys have got lots of choices on how you guys spend your time, so we appreciate you guys spending time with us. We are joined today by Tal or Tal. He said Tal. I keep saying Tal in my head, and I'm like, I knew I was going to screw that up. But Tal, can you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, and then we can get a chance to talk about what you get to do for a living.
Yeah, that sounds great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. Look, I am currently CEO of Instant Financial. I have been in the payments and fintech space for about 20 years, primarily with startups that have provided means of being paid to employees. I was part of a group that started a prepaid payroll card company called Money Network back in 2001 and sold that business. I spent some time doing some things there with the business that bought us, and then took some time off and really was interested in the space, both earned wages and tips, and how we can continue to digitize payments for employees and make sure their access is easier and affordable and they're able to access us when they would like to. So that sort of led me to interest in Instant. I spent some time on the board for Instant for about 2 years before taking this role. Excited about the opportunity in front of all of us in this space.
Yeah, and before we jump straight into what you get to do for Instant, because I am over the moon about it, excited, and I told you about this pre-show about what you guys are doing and how you guys are helping democratize those things. When people say fintech, there's a whole lot of people that throw that it's AI or machine learning.
Yeah.
People throw these words around, but I guess how would you define fintech? Because there's a lot of different moving parts and pieces inside of fintech, and I think a lot of our audience they have a misconception or some level of conception about what fintech actually means. So I'd love to have you define that before we jump into kind of how Instant is really solving restaurateurs' problems.
Yeah, look, there's probably any number of ways to define it. I think for me, it is using technology in the financial space to enable access for consumers and businesses and improve the way that people receive and send payments at the end of the day. I think it all comes back to that. And yeah, so I think for me, that would be it, maybe oversimplifies it a little bit, but I think that's what it is. It's about moving money to people and businesses and using technology to do it in ever better ways.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great place to jump off because I think whether you're talking about credit card payments, whether you're talking about ACHs, whether you're talking about Venmo, whether you're talking about payroll, there's so many different times that money needs to move in order to keep commerce going. Talk to me about the challenge in restaurants today because whether actually why don't we start down the thread of earned wage because I think we've had a couple of guests on that have talked a little bit about earned wage, but really that's a piece that has continued to be innovated within the last 10 years or so. 10 years ago nobody in my world had ever talked about earned wages, and now it's something that is a differentiator as it relates to being able to offer it to your team members is earned wages. But define earned wages for us, and then let's talk about what that process looks like before we jump straight into accessing tips and all of that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think for us, it is making sure wages are available to employees when they want them, where they want them, and how they want them. And that option has not been available until the last few years. As you mentioned, payroll cycles have been, if you go way back in history in the US, it was cash on a daily basis, and then it moved to check, and then it moved to direct deposit. And somehow the employees and the consumers lost out in that whole deal. Their payroll cycles have been ever expanding since we left the sort of agrarian society in the United States to the point now where Instant is being a force and moving us back to employees having that access. And after all, it is their money. And in the restaurant space, we employees need access to that cash for whatever reason, right? We don't know what the reasons are always. It could be a car repair, it could be medical care, it could be groceries the day before your paycheck comes, whatever it may be. And we believe they should have access to those funds that they have earned. And we believe that should have access to those funds at no cost. And that's been the focus of Instant in delivering that, and making sure we have a model to that. I think that ultimately earned wage access becomes a table stakes benefit within the restaurant
Yes.
space. We did a survey during 2022, towards the end of 2022 and 2023, that shows that 75% of people, or a little more than that, are more likely to take a job, not just in the restaurant space, but in any of the verticals that we focus on, if they have access to pay that day. Employees are showing up now for interviews, are showing up at job fairs, and one of the questions they're curious about is, can I have access to my pay? So That's what we want to make sure we deliver and look forward to continue innovation around that as we move forward.
Yeah, now I'm gonna, I guess, double click. It's one of the phrases I use, but double click on that because really, I think it's one of those things that oftentimes, and at least even my own ignorance when I first learned about this, I'm like, so people want access to the money that they earned. Like, how does that even work? And from a direct restaurant perspective, I'm a cook. I'm making $15 an hour, $20 an hour. I live in California, make I'm $30 an hour, and I work 5 hours today. In theory, I grossed up that $30 an hour at 5 hours is $150 or whatever. I should be able to get access to 75 or 100 of those dollars to be able to go feed my family tonight. Is that kind of what, I guess, in a purely basic sense, is that what earned wage access means?
That's it. That's it. And it seems like something we should assume, but just due to payroll practices over the last 50 years, it just is not where we are today. I think it's important. It's become even more important in this day and age when we know that a large majority of the population in the U.S. is living paycheck to paycheck. And again, these are their wages. They have been earned by that employee. Why not make them available to them? The alternative to earned wage access are not good alternatives, right?
Payday loans?
Payday loans, right? Everybody talks about payday loans and the cost associated with payday loans. And that's an obvious cost, and they're generally not in places that people want to go otherwise. The other alternative is this was part of the survey as well. If you need access to cash today and you don't have it, what are you going to do? You're going to go to family or friends. That's generally embarrassing for someone and shouldn't be necessary, especially when you have earned wages that you don't have access to. You can sell something on eBay was an option that we saw. People say that was something they've done in the past, or people work when they're not healthy and are
Hmm.
not shouldn't be working or extending shifts. And so the alternatives to providing access to their wages are not good alternatives. So we just think that this space as a whole and Instant in particular, we're doing good work to make sure we get employees there.
Yeah, and just a couple more threads on this. And I think the gig economy has not helped restaurants. Restaurants have historically they've been a good entry point into the job market, and there's been a lot of growth. But now you've got options, whether it's Amazon or it's all of the delivery companies, Uber Eats, DoorDash. They offer earned wage access, so I can go make a couple $100 driving around, dropping off food, or delivering Amazon packages and have access to my cash today. So from that early stage career person, they're competing with another brand that, with another type of work that allows that access. And so it makes it even that much more critical for especially those entry level positions. Are you guys seeing that same thing on the earned wage access side?
Yeah, no doubt. We all know that the restaurant environment is having challenges in recruiting and retaining labor. And part of that has been the attractiveness of gig wage opportunities in the marketplace. And absolutely, you can, wherever you're getting your gig wage, that is available to you daily. And so certainly that has been a driver. And what we're doing is making sure that we bring that same access and really transparency to what you've earned to employees that are in a typical W-2 type restaurant environment. Absolutely. What the changes in the gig economy over the last 5, 10 years have certainly led to the point of we need to make sure in the restaurant industry, we need to make sure employees have access there as well.
Yeah. And so one of the other big pieces, and again, I worked restaurants coming through high school and through college, and a lot of times it was in table service. And at least, I don't know, I don't even want to tell you how many years ago it was, but it was more than 10. I got to walk away with cash tips every night. That has also drastically changed within the restaurant industry. They used to be 40% cash or 30% cash. And now, especially the higher dollar you get, it's less than 10% cash in a lot of places. And so they don't want to pay for the Brinks truck to show up with thousands of dollars to pay out their tips every day. So a lot of people have moved those to their paychecks. Talk to me a little bit about that transition as people have gone to a cashless society and what impact that's had on those servers now that don't get to walk away with their $100, $200, $300 worth of tips every day.
Anybody that's ever run a restaurant knows the craziness that happens during a meal period in a rush. One of our partners, Restaurant Technologies Total Oil Management Solution, is an end-to-end oil management system that delivers, filters, monitors, and recycles your cooking oil, taking one of the jobs that none of your team wants to do and takes it off your hands, allowing your team members to focus on their guest. Control the kitchen chaos with Restaurant Technologies and make your kitchen safer while maximizing your staff's time. The solution can be provided at no upfront cost. If you want to learn more, please check out rti-technologies.com. inc.com or call 888-796-4997.
Yeah, let's don't forget about the wait staff and those that are working for tips, right? Because that's about 60% of a typical restaurant.
Yep.
And Instant was led the way in moving cash out of restaurants and making sure we digitize tips. Today, we are the leading provider for tips in regards to volume moved, both historically and real time. And so it's very important. And we think that we got to make sure that wait staff is taken care of. We believe that cash has a cost associated with it, and most restaurants believe that now as well. And so we're looking for ways to move cash out of restaurants. There's a few ways you can do that. We think some are better than others. For us, we immediately move those tips and make those available, 100% of your tips available to any employee that's on the wait staff or receiving tips for pay same day. And it's a service we get excited about providing. And we do that without the restaurant, so that a restaurant then doesn't have to bring cash in. And the wait staff gets what they've always been used to receiving, which is pay each day they leave the restaurant. An alternative to that we see in the marketplace is loading tips onto a biweekly paycheck, right? That's in direct contradiction to everything we believe in Instant, right?
Mm-hmm.
As wait staff, historically, they've been able to work and earn good wages as tips and leave that restaurant with cash in their pocket. We believe they should still be able to leave that restaurant with their pay in their pocket, right?
Yeah, with virtual cash, but cash nonetheless.
Virtual accounts via Instant. We don't think that there may be good reasons for doing this and maybe providing the option to employees to do this, but to move their wages from that everyday sequence, every day they work, to a biweekly cycle is the opposite of everything we work for. We hope to continue getting that word out. We've got great restaurant clients that work with Instant today. We want to continue to spread that word. And there's no reason that those wages should have to go on a paycheck for that wait staff member to get their pay 2 weeks later. So that's our goal. We'll continue working on that. And I think the industry is evolving so that we see tips being made available real time.
Yeah, and I again, talking to some of our restaurant clients, that's a huge piece. Is it's hard to retain staff. It's hard to get staff, and then it's hard to retain staff if you don't figure out a way to make sure that they have access to those tips. You said something that's intriguing to me about the cost of using cash. I'd love to have you educate our listeners a little bit about what that means. You said cash is expensive to keep and move around. I'd love to have you, because I know people that think the opposite with the credit card fees and the FinTech fees. That's expensive to use credit cards, and I have my own opinion, but nobody comes here to listen to me talk. They come here to listen to people like you talk. So talk to me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, you might have to keep me from going off on a tangent here, because that's something that I've been in the payment space in both credit card, gift card for quite some time. So I understand interchange, the impact of cards, and the ability to use all those things and those tools. In regards to how it relates to tips, no one's using cash in a restaurant anymore, right? You're going there as a consumer, you're having a great meal, one of our great restaurants in the U.S. We've got great food, right, at the end of the day. And you're paying for that using a credit card or a debit card. But in any case, you're not leaving cash behind. And so restaurants, up until just a few years ago, to fill that cash gap they needed to pay their wait staff, they literally had trucks dropping off cash, typical Brinks trucks, armored cars, dropping off cash at the restaurant on at least a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a week, to meet their cash needs for payout of tips, right? That cost is significant, right? The cost of paying for those trucks, paying for that cash to be brought into the restaurant, it's a significant cost. I don't have the ROI in front of me, but happy to share that with you or anyone else that listens to this later. But it's significant. And most of our major restaurant brands in the U.S. have recognized that and have moved away from that with help from Instant and a few others. The other thing about the cost, the cash itself, is from an employee perspective, we also better understand the risk associated with handling and carrying cash out of a restaurant, especially table service restaurants that are doing significant dollar volume and paying out nice amounts in tips. We know that in the U.S., restaurant staff have become targets for those who would wish them ill will and want to take their money because they know they're walking out the door with cash. And so it's just simply not the best way to do it anymore. And so they're both physical costs and financial costs associated with both of those things that need to be moved away from in many cases. I can touch on My feelings are regards to credit cards and credit card acceptance if you want to go there, but I know that's not what we're here to talk about. So,
Yeah, I think we'll save that for another time. But the other cost that I'm just thinking about while you were talking about that is even the cost of having to manage the distribution of the cash. You talked about bringing the cash in, but now I've got to get a manager that's going to be giving you the cash and making sure that it balances and making sure that you got the right amounts and all of that. Outside of the reporting of that, did I really give it to you? Did I not? And all of those kind of pieces. Those are all difficult pieces to manage, especially as you get to scale.
yeah, if you take a couple hours a day for a manager and managing tips, that's part of that ROI as well. You're absolutely right. A couple hours a day of managing tips, and then if you're in a large restaurant environment and you multiply that times the number of rooftops you have, and that manager actually doing the things you just mentioned, which is distributing tips, managing those tips, calculating those tips. It's just something that's not necessary today, and it's a cost that should come out of all these businesses, you would think.
I'm going to go down another thread just because I heard a statistic recently and I'd love to have you talk about it. And then I want to talk about the tactical ways that Instant goes to market. But I heard a statistic about the US and what a large percentage of the US is either underbanked or unbanked. And I'd love to get access to your experience on that. Large percentage of people keep money in Venmo. Large percentage of this next generation is not using traditional Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank for their banking needs. They're using other forms of alternative payment. And traditionally, at least in my understanding, is payroll companies typically want to ACH to a traditional bank. And I know products like Instant will allow for people to send to these pay card type companies or transfer to these types of accounts that allow them to live their life the way that they might want to. Can you talk a little bit about what your guys' experience has been in that? Because I do think it's something that restaurants need to be aware of, the amount of people that are unbanked or underbanked, meaning they don't have a traditional checking and savings account that I might have had when my parents got me when I was 10 years old or whatever.
Yeah, it's very significant, and it's amongst the minimally banked. We're also seeing a turn towards alternative banks, as you mentioned. So, first of all, consumers are very comfortable today in a sort of alternative bank environment, prepaid bank environment, whereas 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was still a lot of focus on your sort of brick and mortar banks. But today, we see coming to market, millennials and Gen Z are very comfortable with a number of neobanks out there. The fastest growing from an account perspective, the fastest growers are not the brick and mortar banks that we historically think about. They're more along the lines of Cash App and Chime and some of those that are out there today that consumers choose to use. We see employees excited about the opportunity to use Instant as a banking instrument, and we see that in the majority of cases becoming their predominant bank or tool of choice. They also have the alternative to move it, and we see those funds move to those alternative financial institutions that I just mentioned and others. So that's definitely happening, and they're very comfortable with that. Millennials and Gen Z are the majority of the workforce today. They love having the flexibility to choose how they want to bank and when they want to bank and where they would like to see their funds sent. So we continue to make sure we're serving those needs and make sure that they have that access. It will be, we will always have the market in the U.S. that is underbanked in the restaurant environment today. Generally speaking, it's probably at least 15-20% of
Yep.
a given employee base. In a table service restaurant environment, in a quick service restaurant environment, you could see dramatically more than that, maybe 35 to 40 to 50% are underbanked. And so we think it's important to provide solutions that give employees all access. That's one of the things that we do that's a little bit unique is we're not, because of the way we provide our services, we don't turn away any employee. 100% of employees will have access to their wages using Instant or their tips using Instant. And that's unique in the space, and we want to continue to make sure we can deliver that as we go forward as well.
And I think that brings us to a great point to talk about tactically how does this happen, whether it's the earned wages or it's the tips. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys do this, because a lot of restaurateurs, when I talk to them about this, they go, "Oh, it's too good to be true. You're telling me I don't have to deal with all of this craziness and people coming to me, oh, I can't afford gas to get to work, or I got a flat tire and I can't afford to get there, and all of those other things that do come up, and understandably they can't afford it. And I've had restaurant people that we've worked with that have a ledger and they give people payday loans so that they don't have to go to the loan sharks at the payday loan places. But this is the way people have solved it that are good employers. You guys have solved it in a digital way. Let's start on the earned wage side. Back to that cook that worked 5 hours, $30 an hour, he earned $150. How does that transaction actually take place? Because traditionally I'm punching it on a time clock, I'm punching it on the point of sale, and now you guys need to know that he earned this. How do you mitigate the risk? Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like, and then we'll talk through kind of how you guys solve the tip piece.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm not going to give you all our secret sauce, Jeremy. But so anyone that's working with Instant, any employee, when they come on board at an employer, they have the opportunity to participate with Instant, 100%, right? They don't need to walk in the door with a bank account, right? Where in many cases to participate with EWA, you're going to need a bank account. With us, you don't. They're going to have access with an Instant virtual card that they are able to access via the Instant app. So they download the Instant app. They're able to give us the information that we need, and we can send them a virtual card right away. If they'd like to have a hard plastic card, they'll have access to that as well, depending on the employer's choices and how they would like to receive that. And then they go to work, and we receive census data and time and attendance data in a few different ways, depending on the employer and depending on the employer's payroll provider and our partners. But we receive census data and time and attendance data, and based on that, we make an offer to the employee each day that they work. And they receive that offer as they leave work, and from there, they can choose to accept it. That's the other thing about Instant is you're not required to accept it. It'll still be there, and they can choose to accept it. If they do, then it's immediately loaded within the Instant app, and then they have access to those funds using their Instant account at no cost to them. They can go make purchases, do whatever they need to do with those funds at no cost. If they have another account they would like to move it to, they can transfer the funds to another account as well. We just want to make sure that primarily, for instance, as it always has been, they have access to those funds at no cost.
Now, I'm now a restaurant owner and I'm sitting here listening to this and going, you know what? I know that this guy didn't really work those hours. His adjustments weren't there. There's some wage garnishment. There's something going on with his payroll. How do you guys mitigate that detail? Because I earned $150, but I've got a wage garnishment and I need to pay $50 out of that shift for some child support or something along those lines, or I've got taxes or any of those kind of pieces on the earned wage side. Or maybe I falsified my punch transaction and somebody punched in for me and I really wasn't working that shift. How do you guys get around solving for all of those technical reasons? And because those are things that come up every day in payroll. You guys live it every day. So I'm sure you guys have had to deal with these, and I'd love to put our restaurant owners' minds at ease that says you guys have figured all of this stuff out.
Yeah, I think we have. I will tell you there's been a lot of investment in software and development of what we do to make sure we do all that in the right way. If you're earning $100 a day and you want that to be available to you today, what we generally offer is 50% of that, which ends up being about 70% or more of your net pay at the end of the day, right? We also have methods for on behalf of the business monitoring those that might be flagged for garnishments and other things as well, so that we understand that. If we're not able, an instance responsible for advancing and recovering these funds, there's no risk to the employer in anything that we do. And so if we have someone that due to garnishment or whatever reasons, we don't receive the funds to recover all the advances, then we understand that and we'll continue to try to recover from the next payroll. But that's all part of the software that we've put together, understanding sort of the metrics with each given employer via the census file and time and attendance data. Generally, there are not issues with anything that we do, and it's something that we manage through. And at the end of the day, the employer has no risk in what we offer. This is something that we're offering on behalf of the employer to the employee, and it's just responsible for making sure that it's right.
And you said earlier in your description about kind of the access to my tips that I get 100% of the tips on the end of my shift. Again, working in restaurant point of sale, I've had somebody put a $50 tip that they typed in $500 onto there, and now they get access to that tonight. Do you guys have any stopgaps for those kind of things? Tell me a little bit about how tips might differ, because you guys do offer 100% of the tips, whereas the earned wage, you guys might offer, as you said, 70% of net proceeds to that employee.
Yep. Yeah, tips is different, and we really work closely with our restaurant partners there to determine how they would like to manage that. They will, in many cases, they won't manager oversight. So the manager is able to see the tips before they push go
Hmm.
and make sure those tips are funded the way they want to. In some cases, there can be a secondary oversight set up within the payroll department or finance department, however they would like to set that up. And then the restaurant pushes those tips based on using Instant and using our back office and what we've built for them to use. And then, yeah, that's how they get distributed. And generally, it's the same process as if it was a cash payout, right? If it was a cash payout and there was an overpayment, then they would work that out with the employee at some point after that. But generally, again, we don't see those challenges, and whatever the challenges we do see are typically much less significant than they would be if they were in a cash environment, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess one last piece on tips. You've got directly tipped employees. So you got the bartender, you got the server, you've got the busser, maybe not the busser. You got the server, you got the bartender. They get directly tipped. I
Yeah.
got a $100 transaction, I got a $20 tip. I see it in the point of sale data, but now you've got the busser, you've got the bar back, you've got the cook that might be getting indirectly tipped. Do you guys deal with the indirectly tipped employees, and how does that all get managed? Is that just part of your census data and your file that comes through the point of sale for those indirectly tipped employees? Because that's become a bigger piece of not only legislation, but also really just a lot of people that are dealing with these indirectly tipped employees and making sure that they can stay competitive in those job classes.
That's right. Yeah. So, and you're right. We do use census data to validate and verify who we're paying, even on the tips level. And then the managers are able to use our software to allocate tips however they would like to allocate tips. And so if there's a split or whatever it may be, that's available as part of our back office to managers to do that. So again, they're able to see the tips, make sure the tips are set as they would like them to be, and then push send and send the tips. Again, it's 100% funded. And there's a reconciliation process we help them manage through as well, depending on the restaurant, how they would like to do that. Those are all services that we try to provide in regards to just making sure they get tips effectively to their employees when they need to get them there.
I love what you guys are doing. I genuinely, I know I told you this pre-show. I'm jacked, super geeked about all of these different solutions because I think the democratization of the earned wages as well as the tips is a huge piece that many of our listeners, if you guys aren't already on board with something like this, like Instant, you guys got to figure it out. And, while these guys aren't the only ones that do it, these guys do a fantastic job of solving this problem. Been doing it for a long time. So for those that want to learn more about what you guys do, talk to me a little bit about how they would get engaged with you guys, what that might look like from an engagement perspective. I'm now a restaurant. I'm sitting here listening. I'm driving in my car. I pull over to the side of the road. All right, I got to go figure out what to do. Tell them where to go and how they can expect the experience to look like working with your team.
Yeah, no, that's great. I first of all, just you can go to our website, instant.co, and get all of our information there. You can actually register to have information sent to you, and we will definitely follow up. I'm not shy about, hey, look, you can have my email address too. So anybody that's listening wants to reach out and email me, they can at tal.clark@instant. I'll make sure that I'll follow up with you or have somebody else on our team follow up as well. Yeah, we look forward to working with as many of the restaurant operators out there as we can and believe we can certainly get them in the right spot.
Awesome. Awesome. Is there anything that we missed in today's show that you would want our listeners to hear more about that I forgot to ask you about? Because I think I'm super excited to get this episode out there and to get people at a place where they're doing that. But is there anything that I missed?
Look, we want to be available and visible. We're going to attend as many restaurant events as we can this year. So I would urge you to, if you're attending any restaurant events, to find Instant there and come by and talk to us. We'd love to meet you. One of the things we don't do enough of, I think, in 2024, still is a little bit of holdover from COVID, is we don't see each other enough. We love to meet with our clients and those that are interested in Instant. So I hope they'll reach out or come see us wherever we may be. Thank you for your time, Jeremy.
Well, I appreciate you being on and educating us. And again, you had lots of choices as where you could be spending your afternoon. So I appreciate you spending time with us. To our listeners, guys, as I said on the onset, you guys have a lot of choices. So I appreciate you guys spending time with us. Thank you for the education. And to our listeners, make it a great day.